Hello and welcome to your personally curated Spire of the Watcher dungeon guide. Your goal is to learn the ins and outs of this new activity, and my goal is to grow my channel so I can make more videos to help you. So let's get started with that, shall we? The main mechanic of this dungeon is the Arctrician buff, which can be acquired for 30 seconds by standing in the Vex puddles that spawn on Minotaur deaths. This buff allows you to activate Arc nodes by damaging them with this buff. Successfully activating a node will also add 4 seconds to your Arctrician timer, and yes, it can go above 30 seconds if you are shooting them fast enough. And when I say successfully activating a node, I mean shooting the correct node in the sequence. All of the arc nodes are chained together by a series of yellow cables, with most nodes having 2 cables hooked up to them, one being the in and one being the out. The only arc nodes that don't follow suit in this regard are of course the first and last nodes in the sequence, which will only have one yellow cable wired up to them in most circumstances. You can definitively tell which node is the starting one by trailing the cables back to the source until you find a node with some arrows next to it. Dealing damage to the starting node while in possession of the Arctrician buff will activate it permanently, as indicated by its strong blue glow. Your job is to then follow the yellow cable from that node to find the next node and simply repeat the process until you get to the final node and complete the chain. You will know that you successfully activated the next node not only by the 4-second addition to your Arctrician buff timer, but also due to the fact that the yellow cable running from the previously activated node will turn a bright blue. Upon completing a chain, you will see a piece of text in the bottom left saying something along the lines of Arc node circuit completed, or potentially something else depending on what encounter you are doing. The first encounter is simply an introduction to this mechanic, having you complete 4 different chains of arc nodes to progress. This encounter effectively teaches you that the yellow cables are indicative of nodes that need to be activated in order, as opposed to the red cables that we will talk about later. You'll then progress through a bit of corridor navigation to arrive at what is effectively just a very large jumping puzzle, where you can enter by scaling the small platforms on the left side of the room. From here, you'll simply head forward on the bridge and then hop down onto the bridge to your left, after which you'll hop across a series of metal beams and scaffoldings and probably get lost until you notice this teensy tiny little platform on the large column to hop down onto. Definitely didn't take me like 10 full minutes to figure that one out. After that, it's simply follow the path ahead of you, scale up, run across the bridge, hop over to the right, and then hop down. Trust me, it's not nearly as complicated as it sounds once you're actually in there. At that point, you'll think that you're probably stuck again, but no worries. Here, you'll just jump around the column opposite of the side that you came to arrive at the final bridge with an awaiting elevator that provides a pretty mesmerizing ride. You might see a subscribe button on your way up there too. Feel free to click it if you want to. You don't have to, but I'd appreciate it. You'll then path through this new room to the back left corner where you'll do a bit of back and forth parkour to make your way up to the top. This will take you to another room that I, once again, definitely didn't spend 20 minutes in trying to figure out where to go, just to realize that there is a platform outside of the large window. Seems like a safety hazard if you ask me. This will take you to the go up encounter, where you quite literally do the exact same thing that you did in the first encounter 3 different times on 3 different floors. You'll have 2 total sequences to complete on each floor, which will activate an elevator to take you to the next floor to do the same thing all over again. Nothing different here other than some arc beams that don't actually kill you even if you run straight through them, and a much higher risk of falling to your death. After that, you'll end up in a room where it's very obvious where to go next, just like the rest of this dungeon. Clearly, you were supposed to see the very tiny lever that opens the window pane to let you go outside, where you'll meet the consecrated Achilles, the Siren's current. Couldn't at least give him like a mustache or something. This is the first encounter where your weapons actually matter, for which I recommend long range across the board, such as Arbalist and a linear fusion for DPS, and a scout or pulse rifle for ad clear and shooting arc nodes. Just like the first encounter, your goal is to kill Minotaurs, grab the Arctrician buff, and complete the chains. The only difference is that these connections begin in the middle and work their way out to the borders, as opposed to the other way around. Completing all 4 sequences, or as they are called in this encounter, fuel rods, will begin the DPS phase, sending the boss to the final arc node activated. Here is where the long-range primary weapons come in clutch, as you'll have a ton of void beam harpies shooting you from across the arena. Do your best to clear them out together right before hitting that final arc node to begin the DPS phase. As for the DPS phase itself, if you have ever done the 3rd encounter of the Garden of Salvation raid, then you can skip ahead 30 seconds because it is quite literally the exact same thing. If you have not done this encounter, or you just like hearing me talk, which would be a first, then you'll see the boss light up his eyeballs in about 10 different places, all of which you'll want to shoot with your primary weapon. After blowing up all of these, his center crit spot will open and he will become damageable, at which point you'll want to linear the day away as he retreats down the catwalk back to the middle of the arena. Chasing him as he falls back will certainly give you a better shot, however you want to be careful while doing this for 3 reasons. The first is that there are holes in the catwalk that you'll fall into and basically lose out on all of your DPS, so keep to the sides as you move down. The second is that there will be more adds beaming you as you get closer to the middle and thus get in range of more of them. The third and most important reason is that to end the DPS phase, the boss will let out a large damaging knockback that seems to send you back further and deal more damage the closer to him that you are. Personally, I followed him down as he went to the middle and then actually started to backpedal retreat myself as he arrived to minimize the damage and knockback that I would receive. You can do a maximum of 50% of his health in one damage phase, after which it's rinse and repeat until he's dead. After killing him, you'll then head to the middle and crawl through some tight spaces to begin your descent towards the reactor. Eventually, you'll land in a room with some miscellaneous Vex and red cables. These differ from the yellow cables in that the red cables are not chained together in a sequence. All red cables go from whatever the source is to one node and nothing more. The mechanic when it comes to red cables is still shooting them while in possession of the Arctrician buff. However, where they differ from the yellow ones is that the red cables are time-based. To complete a set of red cables, you need to find and shoot every single arc node connected to a red cable within about a 10-second period before they reset and force you to start again. Similar to having to do 3 ascending floors of yellow cables before the previous boss, you'll have to do 3 descending floors of red cables to reach the next boss. These are much simpler and quicker than the yellow ones though, thank God. The final boss encounter begins by spawning a Hydra on each side of the starting room, which must be killed to spawn the Minotaurs that will drop the Arctrician buff on death. After acquiring this buff, you'll want to complete the sequence of red cables by shooting the 4 easily visible nodes on the inner side of each column, and the 5th that isn't quite as noticeable above the main door. Doing so will open the starting node on 2 of the 4 yellow cables on the outer sides of the columns, 1 on each side, left and right. You'll then use that Arctrician buff to chain together the yellow cable arc node sequence, which will lead you into the reactor room, the location where the Wyvern starts. After connecting both nodes, the reactor will become armed, luring the Wyvern in to disable it. When this occurs, you'll vacate the reactor room to return to the starting room to kill a new Minotaur and acquire a new Arctrician buff if you don't already have one, because the nodes connecting the red cables will reactivate, requiring you to shoot all 5 of them again to purge the reactor core before the Wyvern can disable it, thus activating DPS phase. Make sure to clear the starting room of all non-Minotaur enemies before beginning DPS, however, as they will not despawn. For damage, something like Izanagi's Burden, Linears and Divinity, or Tractor Cannon and Laments is perfectly fine here. Similar to the previous boss, there is nothing different from phase to phase when it comes to this one, so it's simply rinse and repeat until he's dead. And if you plan to attempt a solo or solo flawless run of this dungeon at any point, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can see the complete walkthrough guides I'll upload for all 3 classes over the next few days. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.